Thank you. And this week, it's been a week. Sick children, other things. So I'm saying this to say, I want your help with thinking through this. I've got some ideas. Music, when I was invited to speak at this festival, my dear friend Jane McPherson, who works with me at the School of Social Work, was like, you should do this. And I chose to take it as okay, well, that's a nudge. I don't do a lot with music and social work, but I'll describe a little bit about my background and how this fits in, and then I'm curious to hear from you all about, why does it matter? How does all this fit together? I think I could get better at this today based on your feedback and thinking through things. So I've been playing music for a long time. And I have not sung because I have an answer. Sing because I have a song, which Maya Angelou maybe didn't write, and maybe Joan Walsh Augland, or someone else did. Anyway, somebody wrote it at one point, and a few people have written it down. But I current day teach at the School of Social Work, just came from my assessment in psychopathology teaching, the DSM, and I own a practice called Revolution Therapy and Yoga, where we mostly do sex therapy, and then we do donation-based yoga, and I've done that for a long time. It was so nice to hear about movement and healing, because I've thought a lot about somatic practices and healing. But way before that, starting when I was 16, and the first gold coffee shop owner said it was okay for even 14-year-olds to smoke in their coffee shop. I started playing music and hanging out with the poets there and generally connecting with musicians. And I grew up in South Dakota in a family that was pretty musical. My grandmother lived to 100, and until she was 100, would play all the way through The Sound of Music on the piano, and we'd sing with her, even though she had quite advanced Alzheimer's by the end. And also, as a songwriter, I liked that because I had one really good song that I've written, and I would just always play that one again and again for her. And she'd say, "Did you really write that?" Yes. And before she was 100, when she was younger, she used to play in Minneapolis. Her brother played fiddle, she played piano, and they performed at parties because there was just less canned music, and that was a more typical thing to do. So I've been thinking about art and community for a long time. Started performing at about 16, started smoking at about 13, so that's the right age for a South Dakotan. And so that's been a huge part of my community all the way along. And now I do think about, and this is the question that I'm going to eventually pass the ball to y'all on, this question of how does it fit with the whole thing? And there's some ways in which it's obvious, and there's some ways in which I'll probably learn about today how it fits with the whole thing. So from South Dakota, and then I went to college in Wisconsin and graduate school in Pennsylvania, and I toured playing music, learning things about health and well-being, including I've got the Wilkes-Barre live show up there because do you know Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania? Any Penn Staters? There's a lot of them around. Okay, well anyway, Wilkes-Barre's by Penn State, and I thought I was driving to a taped recording of a show, and then I got there, and then it was a live show, and it was televised, and there was a live audience, and I had driven 4 hours, I was exhausted, and I went up, and oh no, and the people after me were so cool. The guy had drummed for Space Hog. He had his glasses super glued to his head. They never came off. They were so much cooler than me. And I went up and I started my song and totally choked, now I know to be the psychological phenomenon of choking, I don't know the song. And then I stopped, and the audience was like, it's okay, you can do it. Played through it. So I learned a lot through performance anxiety, actually. I've done lots of work getting support around how scary it is to be in front of people and to share things that were truthful. And that's what I was up to with music, especially as a young person, was in a relatively emotionally repressed environment, sharing important things I was learning about being a human and meeting people and traveling around. So there was building community in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania. I went to graduate school in Pennsylvania thinking, well, you know, if they pay me to go to graduate school, then maybe I can tour more. But it turns out there's a lot of ways to make $12,000 in Pennsylvania a year. That would have taken a lot less effort, but that's okay. So what I learned with that master's is how little I like theoretical work and how important applied work is for me. And so I ended up coming back to school, getting a social work degree, other things. And at that point, I started working at a crisis hotline in the community. I also started my yoga training, so thinking about kind of somatics and thinking about how rhythm heals communities and how being together in person heals communities. And that's still what I love about playing music and getting together. So those were the touring days. Minnesota in the car was when I played. There were these coffee shops called Acoustic Cafe. Anybody been to Winona, Minnesota? Very beautiful. Like, drive along a cliff, and I played there. I think I got paid $40. Then I was driving home. I fell asleep on the way home, like at 3 a.m. after the show, and crashed my car. And I thought, if I keep touring, I might die. Which a lot of my friends actually had bad car accidents through this and those kind of things. So it was a shift. This is a picture of me with my goddaughter Maggie in Austin, Texas, touring. So there were also like so many sweet memories from that time. But also I met a partner. I didn't, it's kind of fun to travel around and like hook up with people and meet new people, but then it got kind of lonely and other things. And so when I moved to Athens, I started doing yoga at a place called Rubber Soul Yoga. This dude came in, John Norris, who, with his partner, Sally, and he's like, I'm a drummer. I think you need a drummer. I'm like, I'm an acoustic piano player. You need like a drummer? And he's like, well, I've got this like cellist, upright bassist who comes in that. Good. All right, sold. So here I linked with the band for the first time. I started getting more treatment for my performance anxiety for the first time, which if you know treatment performance anxiety, often behaviorally means making mistakes in public while keeping eye contact with people. And music is a great place to do that, to just be there and notice that I don't set fire when I make a mistake. I just make a mistake in public and keep moving. And we had fun instances like playing the Savannah Book Festival, but also I went back to school for social work, and I was working, for example, at a nursing facility where they had a piano and they would let me play in there. And it was so interesting to move from playing in the community for, I don't know, like applause, accolades, not fame at that point, something else. And then at the nursing facility, it was like peace, ease, going into rooms, and people who would be moaning would stop moaning when I sang to them or could bring a piano in and play to them. So like new opportunities for where and how to build community. Is there sound on this? Because there's going to be a little video. Okay, we'll see. So I started going to this quarry that's out towards Alberton where the bassist Charlie King used to go when he was down on his luck. And he was down on his luck a good bit. And so this is at the quarry. I started having children. That made a difference. Let's see if you can hear it. This is not a setup. This is a cello mic that a later cellist took over, my spouse, Roger, and he had his cello mic set up, and we brought our child to the quarry. Here's what occurred. So, it changed things anyway. New backup singers, new opportunities. And so things that I'm sitting with, things that I'm thinking about are that music does not have to be perfect, technically correct to be magic. There's a big part. I think about this with yoga too, or any space where people gather in person and set their phones down. Magic happens and connects. No offense if you have your phone. Phones are wonderful, but also like spaces where there's a break from that can be really important. Over the years, this was somebody's wedding. You might know Chris McKay, who's done lots of much cooler stuff than me, and Kyle Pilgrim. I've played at people's weddings. We've done like these holiday shows. I don't know if y'all know Marty Winkler, Lisa Chesnick Ferguson, Tony Oscar, who just played with Bichos Vivos at the Porch Fest. So these different kinds of setup, different kinds of communities for different purposes. It was so important to me early on to write my own music. And to find my voice and to share that. And later, it became important to bring people together and kind of ease them along. So I remember people saying early on, well, why don't you learn some covers that will help people to feel more comfortable? And I was like, why don't you go ahead and fuck off? Because this is my work and I do my voice. And later there was more space for that question of just like, what am I up to here? Porch Fest. How many of you went to Porch Fest last weekend? Yes. So, this was when my friend Antje's house was on Boulevard. She moved back to Germany. She taught in the film studies department. We were on Cobham. But the sense of like what it means to just bring a town out and hear music and enjoy together. I got to do Athens in Harmony last year, where I learned that there's, this whole royalty of people who have been performing in the Athens community who I wasn't even at all connected to. It was a totally different setup. And so I love how Athens in Harmony is set up. Deidre and Marcus. And that project of bringing people out, sharing music, bringing community together to build bridges, to bridge divides. I got to perform at it was the Cottage fundraiser, and so I played around with Don't Stop Believin', and I started in like my, hood thing. And then I stripped it off, and then in the end I had a little tiara on. That was fun. But here are the lessons that I think I have so far, and then I'm going to ask you to add to them. Cooperation is more fun than competition. So generally bringing people together, building community, it's usually more fun for me than even when there's like a battle of the bands, or people are like, why don't you come do it? I'm like, oh, because I don't want to. That doesn't sound very fun to me. That sounds kind of stressful. It's useful to take risks and explore in public, like regardless of, I've been doing it with music for a long time, but it helps with teaching, it helps with yoga teaching, it helps with, building empathy around kind of the fear of being in front of people. A range of voices make a sound richer. Sound richer. We learn different things from different people. So over the years, I came to see my various bandmates as masters of public engagement. Like perfectionism, I know maybe in the music school or something, perfectionism around performance exists, but in folk music, it does not. I feel like in folk music, there really is this spirit of getting good at riding the vibe, playing around with what's fun for the community. Every part of life is better with a sprinkle of creativity in one part. So even though I'm not that interested in touring right now, there were times when my kids were little. For some reason, my kids hate the piano. They're just like, stop! You're horrible! It's terrible! It might be like a little bit threatening when I'm like not available and on a stage. Anyway, but even when I'm doing sort of less of that, it's always been an important part of the mix. And then when it reemerges, it often reemerges in ways that are more about community than they are about like technical proficiency or some particular application. Although I do think it's healing for our communities, and I do think it's healing for sure for me to have these rhythmic experiences, people. And these many different elements of work and play benefit from creativity. So here's what I wondered. My first idea was I was going to make you sing, and that got vetoed by my partner. And I was like, don't start with that. That'll be really stressful. Here's what I want you to think about, and I'm going to invite you to talk about with somebody next to you. What's something that you do that's creative where you don't necessarily get paid? It's not necessarily for your job, but it could be, cooking, dancing, sewing, these different ways that we build community and connection to ourselves and others through creativity, whether or not that is something that goes into public. And then I'm wondering, what are the benefits of your creative work for the rest of your work? And I guess I'm assuming that not all your work is 100% creative. Although I will say all work is pretty creative, doing therapy, very creative job. One of the most fun, creative jobs I think there is on this planet, one of them. So think about a thing that you do that's creative, and then turn to your partner and have a chat about what some of the benefits are. And I'll ask you, and then I'll collect them, and then I'll feel better about my life.
You can partner with Nigel. Behind you.
Partner
Partner with Nigel. Great, I'm gonna try. Me either, so. Well, I have to do like. But I feel like my creative stuff that I do for.
So you haven't asked this question? I have a strange answer to what comes to
And that's the best way I can explain it, like it is. Sometimes I can work with everything, and then everything. Like, I made it I didn't do, and so when I did that song, in my head, the basics. And then I had to, top on the top, and I did it. So. And I also found I think it's supposed to be a duck, like a little more, but I made it into
found that aspect of my self-defense. And that's been something really kind of that tough aspect process of this.
Yes, I would make like what I make, the stuff that I do. So yeah, like that's, and I'm just other museums as well. Like a literal
Start off by identity, creative research, and I live like I even became a famous composer.
And so that way, it's a very like
Which
heavy on the brain.
qualifies me for
I remember it's that
but actually what then happened was that I became more involved in the world.
that like is very deep, like serious and like in a way that's not
An activist, very and
like everything that I make is really yeah, I love the show.
So they didn't like the state of this guy that I was involved so I regained my actual I regained my freedom. I do think that for me, creative definitely
People always forget the rest of the phrase like
what benefits the communities because I work with I help people build their own
like 2 more minutes, please. 2 more minutes. Supplies of every type. Right.
I was in the face. I have a way of thinking about my life. It's not supposed to have a whole I continue with activities of popular programs.
I guess. Yeah, it was, I'm wondering if I do it that way, if I give one, like, so many hints, I never looked it up.
But I have to stop pieces of him. Don't do that because I don't want to don't say okay. That's why I was
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine what the machine that below to find Lego if I don't do well somewhere. Because for me, that's never a thought back.
very brilliant to walk out and being on the stage environment.
It's tight. It's like you can relax.
Watch these models. I got it. I still get involved. Actually, the ones that you can't see being some kind of fetish that was not attractive. And so we get
more freedom.
I'm glad you found freedom. It's just this model is
All right, so stay with your partner. You want And I'm curious to hear from you. So, talk me into it. Why shouldn't I give up these fun elements of what I'm doing? We talked a little bit about the idea that it's fun, how doing something in a non-intense way can make it more likely to sort of keep doing it, which can be joyful. This kind of liberal arts vibe of the way that things fit together and that we often learn one thing from another. What other stuff did y'all come up with?
I think it's the benefits of it. It seemed like
That's
a
fine,
lot
yeah.
of fun, just
Yeah.
for the sake of doing something that is not transactional.
Like we said, taking something that maybe isn't as life or death, literally at times, to be able to take that and say to yourself, this isn't life or death, I can have fun doing this.
We were talking about sometimes having jobs that were a little more life and death and then just being like, well, this is really not. Let's see if I can really let this be.
It feels like there are very few things cooler about being, alive and existing than to have an idea and then create it, like put it in the world where that thing didn't exist before. And, meaning making is so critical to even feeling a sense of connectedness to fellow humans, because then you understand, if you're in the process of it, you're also much more empathetic to the process that others around you are experiencing. It's really hard if you're not also trying to create to even care about what anyone else is trying to create.
Yeah, that's true. Creators are drawn together. Yeah, that part is empathy.
In creating together, you learn a lot, just period, but also about others that are creating with you and seeing them in different ways and seeing them express different things. And that is just so joyous.
Yes. It can be totally different than the kind of talking relationship. It's like people who I've played a lot of music with, really different vibe. Yeah.
Just to continue the thought, and we talked about breaking down boundaries that may have been there before. So even for so what was your name again?
Amos.
Amos, and I'm James. And so like we talked about kind of our vocations, I guess. Like my job is a production and events manager at the School of Music. And it's kind of like all consuming type of thing, but I allow it to be because it can be so rewarding, because I find things like the creative aspects and aiding others in their creative aspects so rewarding. And then Amos with his DMA dissertation is kind of like seeing the same thing, like trying to find different areas of Athens to connect with and breaking down those boundaries and finding the similarities. And we kind of were reminded of one of the talks that we heard yesterday from Monty Miller. He gave some examples of how hip hop, and this is applicable to just any kind of form of human expression, I guess. A unique voice is expressing a thought, an opinion, a song, a dance, whatever. And then while it's unique, it's also universal. So like he showed us a clip of this entire arena singing along to this song that was this sentiment. That's a very unique sentiment, like someone that's suicidal. So very dramatic, very unique, very personal type of thing, and yet the whole arena is singing along like they identify with that, and that gives them solace, that gives them healing. It's just a form of human expression. I think just the same as writing or talking, dancing, music, just all of that.
Yeah, I think Barbara Einrich wrote that there's like a basic human need to get together in groups and feel that solidarity in your body. And I didn't know the acronym that he used for your dissertation, but you showed it a different way too. DVM?
Oh, I said DMA, but I'm thinking Doctor of Musical Arts because so used to being from the school. It's PhD probably.
Yeah.
Right, sorry, I'm just so
No problem.
music.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to follow through because James brought up our conversation, and I think the idea of we think that the breaking of boundaries from like self and other, from personal, individual to community and everything, entails a lot of play. And I think that's what I'm also realizing with this entire conference since yesterday, that, the idea of playing between, what's imagination and what you experience around you, how you think for yourself and how you think about others and how they think about you. It's all like, what do you call this, a beautiful mess, which is generative of, like, whatever that is, creative products, is it self-cultivation, is it mental health, whatever that is, the idea of playing with, like, concepts brings you somewhere.
Yes, that's so nice. I like moving it from fun to play with this idea that we don't get as much of an opportunity as we might need as adults to play. So like adult opportunities to play, to come up with new meanings, new connections. Yeah.
And kind of along those lines of play and breaking boundaries, we were talking a bit about how like we can really like box ourselves in and think like I am this kind of person who does this thing. And a lot of times just like trying something new, or like I know working with people, collaborating will often like kind of force you out of your comfort zone. And like you might end up doing flower arrangements when you never thought you were someone who could arrange flowers, and you realize, oh, this is a thing I can do. I'm now a flower arranging person. Or like I never thought I could paint, but then you try and it's like, oh, I love this thing. And I feel like play is really involved too, and there's something about doing something that you haven't invested yourself into that opens it up to it, like this kind of freedom, and there's like no expectations. It's like, all right, we'll see what happens.
Yes. Yeah, which is kind of scary. When I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not a professional creative person. Or ask me to talk about social work, then I'll say, yeah.
Well, so my therapy is my kind of lens that I look through. And so like all kind of what everyone was saying, that narrative piece, I think is just so powerful. And even for myself, when I'm doing something creative, there is that piece, right? Oh, I am this thing, but then I'm trying something new, and it challenges that. It's like that opportunity to deconstruct that kind of concept of self. And so you're breaking down kind of that sense of what narratives do I hold about myself, and how can I see a different narrative within that.
Possibilities. Well, thank you. This is super encouraging and enjoyable, and yeah, what a lovely group of people. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of it.
Thank you so much.